Hello, I am Enrique Sada, and this is Mexico Centered, a podcast from the Center for the United States and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Immigration reform continues to be on the political agenda without any end in sight. On one hand, the debates over potential solutions to incorporate the 11 million undocumented immigrants, or at least part of this population, into American society and economy have not receded to the background. Quite the opposite. The recent Democratic presidential debates show the prominence of immigration reform on the political platform of the party. On the other hand, no bill has been passed by Congress, and the most recent attempt at immigration reform in 2013 did not get a vote on the House of Representatives. If more than 70% of Americans support providing legal status to undocumented immigrants given they meet certain conditions, why has immigration reform been so politically polarizing? In what ways does maintaining the status quo affect the economy and the communities in which undocumented immigrants live? Is there any solution that Democrats and Republicans can agree on? To discuss these questions and get a business perspective on the topic, I sat down with Stan Marek. Stan Marek is the CEO of Marek family of companies, one of the largest interior contractors in the Southwest. In addition, Marek is focused on workforce development, sustainability, and comprehensive immigration reform. He is the co-founder of Texans for Sensible Immigration Policy and a member of the Greater Houston Partnerships Task Force, Americans for Immigration Reform. Here's our conversation. Stan Marek, CEO of Marek family of companies, a strong advocate also for immigration reform. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be on the Mexico Center podcast.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So as I just mentioned, you are the president and CEO of Marek, a company that specializes in interior construction, but you're also well known for your involvement in discussing issues of immigration reform. And my initial thoughts in learning this was that this two different tracks of your work actually, I think, come together very well. Many immigrants that come from Latin America, legal as well as undocumented, work in the construction industry, for instance, as so-called low-skilled workers. So I guess my question is, what motivates you in advocating for immigration reform? How much is it kind of like, say, a humanitarian concern that it is the right thing to do, and how much is it that it would benefit the American economy and also, therefore, the industry that you work in?
Well, good question, Enrique. I think from a social justice point of view, I've been raised Catholic. I have great mentors, and Archbishop Joseph Fiorenza, Bishop McCarthy from Austin. Both have been here in Houston and very much in support of the rights of immigrants and everybody. I mean, just race equity, and then from a construction standpoint, our workforce for the state is probably 80-90% Latino, and about half of them are undocumented. Not because they want to be undocumented, there just hasn't been a way for them to get legal status since the Immigration Reform Act of 1986. And there just hadn't really been any legislation that allows them to find a way other than marrying a U.S. citizen or going back to Mexico, applying for a visa, which takes forever. So, the demand has always been here. The border has been open. It always has been. People come, people go. And after 9/11, it sort of stopped the circular migration that we've enjoyed for decades, and it really changed things. And enforcement has really picked up. And companies like mine, we get I-9s on everybody. We E-verify. It's really hard for us to find people, and we need to change the laws. I mean, what I've advocated is ID and tax. These people that have been here 5 years, let's say, if they can pass a background check, and I take them down to Homeland Security, pay for an ID, pay for the background check, and give them a 5-year visa and let them work and pay taxes. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. But the political environment, as you know, is toxic, and nobody's going to do anything. So, but these people are here, and 98% of them are great people. They're family people. They came here for a better life, just like my great-granddad did from Czechoslovakia. in the late 1800s, and we're all immigrants. And I just hate to see the hatefulness and the divisiveness of our nation over this issue, and somebody needs to heal it. And I think you start by doing something with the people who are here, because I really feel our borders are secure. I mean, we've got very few people coming to work. Very few. Most are here humanitarian, the asylum seekers, things like that. Very unfortunate that conditions in those countries in Central America are so bad. I mean, it's just, and a lot of it, looking back, might be some of the fault of the U.S. back when we sent the Secret Service in there, the CIA, and some of the crazy things we did in Latin America and trying to stop communism. It may have impacted it. So, Enrique, I think that Houston with 600,000 undocumented, Texas with 2.5 million estimated undocumented, there may be more. These are time bombs ticking away in our community. I mean, law enforcement, people aren't reporting crimes. Health care, you don't have primary care, you get sick, you wind up in the ER. Go to our ERs, look what they look like. Education, the kids, our future workforce are suffering. I mean, they're worry about mom and dad being deported or their friends being deported. It's just tragic. And it's not like there's just a few 100,000. There's millions. And this is Texas. This is what is going to define us in the years to come.
And it's something that affects not just one area of American life, but also healthcare, just how we report crime, all of those things.
Absolutely.
You said that it was hard to find people. Do you mean it's hard to find people to work in this industry? Because of
construction is hard. It's it's not air conditioned. It's a lot of lifting. And our image doesn't have a good industry. Our industry doesn't have a good image. Right. If you look at the construction workers you see on the sites, they're ragged looking. A lot of them don't have good tools, good equipment. We're trying to change that stereotype. In our company, we do extensive training for safety. We do skills training, and we don't sell a job. We sell a career. When you come to work for an American company, you're going to have a career. You're going to be around for a long time if you want to be, and you're going to learn a trade that is portable to anywhere in the world, and you're going to have a future. And that's what a lot of companies in my industry are not doing. They hire the undocumented worker or the worker who doesn't want to pay taxes, and they work off payrolls. They don't pay payroll taxes, et cetera, and they don't have workman's comp if they get hurt. They don't get paid overtime, and that's probably more than half of our industry. And that half is the half that projects a really bad image to the kids in our high schools. It's really hard to find people who want to work with their hands, and we have to change the perception for these kids. First of all, the wages need to be higher. It's in our company, a high school grad starting out can make $36,000 a year, which is not bad, but there's not many jobs like that. Mm-hmm. And we need to create more jobs like that and offer training. The problem with not training workers is they're not as productive. In our industry, there's estimates of up to 25% of the work we put in place has to be fixed or redone. That's just way too high, and that's because people don't know what they're doing. And it's going to hurt us in the long run.
So your involvement in issues around immigration can be seen in the Greater Houston Partnerships Task Force, Americans for Immigration Reform, and also Texans for Sensible Immigration Reform. Can you tell me more about the actions that you have taken to see these ideas realized? You talked about Texan ID and tax, for instance. What are you doing to see this realized and how to best integrate undocumented immigrants right into American society and economy?
Well, backing up a step, the Americans Immigration Reform, TXIP, Texas Sensible Immigration Policy, all those were early efforts to mobilize the business community who realized the impact of not having a sensible immigration bill, what it would do to our city, our state, our nation. And we spent a lot of time in Washington visiting with elected officials, with Schumer and Pelosi, McConnell, Cornyn, and really got nothing done. I mean, this immigration issue has been a political football. Closest we got was in 2013, the Kennedy-McCain bill. That was a very comprehensive bill. It was a very well-written bill. It got 64 votes in the Senate, which is unheard of. And Boehner would not even let the House vote on it. He just felt like between the Freedom Caucus and the Tea Party, it was going to destroy him if he put it up for a vote. He did not. If he had put it up for a vote, it would have passed easily, and we would not be sitting here today with this mess we're in. So our new play is, I've given up from the top down. It's got to be a grassroots. You've got to educate people about immigration. You've got to give them the facts, not the left, not the right, just the rational middle. So we hired a producer who did a rational middle series on energy for Shell Oil that helped change a lot of the attitudes about fracking and drilling in communities. They would show these 8 to 11 minute YouTube videos talking about the rational middle, and they work. So we hired this firm, Gerry Collenberg, a producer, to do 10 8 to 11 minute YouTube videos called The Rational Middle of Immigration. And they're online. We've had about 1,500,000 views of them this year, and our goal is to have 20 million views by 2020. Obviously, that's going to take a lot of work. But we have the Center for Houston's Future as a sponsor, and also the Mexico Studies at Rice Baker Institute also participating as a sponsor. We offer these videos to the world. A lot of people are picking them up and making them part of their immigration presentation. The New American Economy, one of Bloomberg's efforts to have sensible immigration, is using them. Interfaith Ministries, ADL, just about anybody that wants to add them to their immigration platform, we encourage them to do so. 10 very important topics in immigration reform, like DACA, H-1B visas, the wall, history of immigration, a lot of talking heads like Stephen Kleinberg, Tony Payan, Charles Foster. They're good. They're well done. $50,000 a piece to do. I hope they get the message across.
They look beautiful. I've seen a few. I'll need to finish them because they're very, very well done, and I think very good information. And so, you mentioned that you are trying to then now. It didn't work from the top down. You're trying to educate the public, and but according to a recent survey conducted by Pew. And it was conducted in late July, early August, 72% of Americans support providing some sort of legal status for undocumented immigrants if they meet certain conditions. I guess people would disagree on what those conditions would be, right? But it seems like more than a majority of Americans support providing some kind of legal status. So if this is the case, then what has been the issue, right? What is preventing this from happening? You mentioned the political environment. Does it seem then that the right strategy is, if the public is already on your side of the issue, like what's missing?
Well, I think that the Republicans are worried that if they got legal status, even though legal status would not mean they would become voters, that because the Republican Party has been so tough on immigration that they would vote Democrat. It's my experience that most of the Latinos I know have more Republican principles than they do the Democratic. I mean, they don't want handouts. They just want to work. They have family values. And I'm excuse the train. I'm disappointed that the Republican Party hasn't done more. I mean, George Bush, G.W. Bush, he knew what needed to happen, and he was all about getting an immigration bill done when 9/11 hit. He and Vicente Fox had a deal, but since then it's just been back and forth, and the Tea Party has been strong advocates, and they have certainly cause the Republican candidates who are running for office to realize they're not going to win a primary without the support of the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be very anti-immigrant, even if they don't feel that way, because everybody wants to be elected. That's the problem. Okay. Or they want to be re-elected. So that is hurt. But, to me, if we're going to deport them, deport them. But what would that do to the economy to lose 11 million people, most of them working in critical industries? It would be devastating. So if we're not going to deport them, we need to come up with a way to ID them and get them out of the shadows. And my whole thing with the ID and tax, it would be a great way to start. I mean, a friend of mine called it an adult DACA. Because really what you're doing is you're giving all your information to the government. And for that, you're going to get a work permit and legal status. Can't vote, no food stamps, no subsidies, but you can work and you can get a driver's license. You can finance a house. You can do things that you couldn't normally do. So I think people, if offered the opportunity to be ID'd and taxed, they would do so. And the beauty of ID and tax is if the employer is the one that goes and sponsors a person in Homeland Security, just like you would a visa worker, and we're paying for the ID, we're paying for the background check, it doesn't cost the government anything. And then all of a sudden, that person who's been working for cash and not paying any taxes, he's working for an employer who's paying and matching taxes. So the amount of money for every million workers we could take out of the shadows and put into a W-2 job, in other words, an hourly job paying taxes, is $6.75 billion for every million. So take all 10 million and put them in, that's $67 billion a year. And we're wasting all of this precious money that we should have been going to the government to reduce the debt, to take care of some of the problems along the border for humanitarian aid. And, if we did the ID and tax, the employers are the ones that have the benefit of the labor. The employers are the ones that will be paying the taxes for the individual. And that just makes sense. And why we can't do it, I don't know. I've been to several elected people, Congress and House, and it's like, well, they would never agree, or it's always they, the other. and what I'd really like to do is see the president do it by executive order. I mean, he could take the money that all of us are sending to Social Security for no-match letters, and instead of that going into their general fund, he could take that $6 or $7 billion a year and use it for border security or for even humanitarian aid or build his wall. I mean, if the president's decided to do this, it would make him look like that was a good deal for the American people and for the people who are here that haven't had a chance to get legal. And and now Congress wants to, well, let's increase the visas. Let's bring in more workers from out of the country. And my goodness, you got 11 million here. Why would you bring in more? Let's do something with those that are here. They've got skills. They've been working here a long time. Right. And the only thing they need is I'd like to see them have safety training so there's not so many accidents. I'd like to see them get some skills training so they'd be more efficient. And they just need to come out of the shadows. It's time.
Right, and there are plenty, as you said, like you get no match letters for Social Security because there's plenty who have either working on their false Social Security number or someone else's Social Security
Absolutely.
number.
Absolutely. I mean, when we hire somebody, we look at the Social Security number and the name, and if we e-verify it, it comes back okay because it's somebody else. So I mean, the e-verification system is not going to work without an ID that's tamper-proof. And the Social Security system as the national ID, which has been around since 1938, is not going to do it. We've got retina scans now. We've got electronic fingerprints. We've got all kind of ways to ID people that are foolproof. And we need to be using those.
So is this like a solution in the meantime while we have more immigration reform, this ID and tax that you propose, I think the chance of a comprehensive immigration bill like the Kennedy-McCain bill of 2013 would be tough with this Congress and with the president. You might want to take the low-hanging fruit. To me, the lowest hanging fruit is ID and tax of people who are here.
because law enforcement needs to know who they are.
Right.
And our schools need to have the parents cooperating to help educate the kids. And our health care, we need to know who's sick so we can do vaccinations and things like that, so we can help the healthcare industry. And employers, we're in desperate need of people, and the skilled people who are here, if we could hire them, it's a no-brainer, because we're doing the work. We're bringing the people out of the shadows. We're paying for the administration. It's just a good system, and then we would, the asylum thing is tough, but we need to do more to improve the conditions in those Latin American countries. Our airports, I think they're doing a pretty good job on security there. When you come in on a visa, if you're overstaying, you need to go back. I mean, they've got the technology to do that. And if we need a future flow of people, we need to determine how many we need. But we don't need to bring more workers in here on H-2B visas, until we do something about the 11 million who are already here. That's just going to aggravate the problem.
So you mentioned that you've been to Washington and talked to politicians there, and in looking at this, I kind of see the scenario. Republicans would say, well, this seems like a reward for people for breaking the law. On the other side, Democrats might say, well, this is not enough, and it would preclude from actually legislating a path to citizenship. And so I've been thinking, what about this being implemented more locally in Texas, for instance, or is that?
It's got to be a federal deal. I mean, I think our mayor would do anything to get ID and tax. Ed was the Chief Arceveda, just to have 700,000 people come out of the shadows and start reporting crimes. Right. would be incredible. And the same way with health care, for these workers to have workman's comp, so when they get hurt, they don't wind up in the ER. These are all positive things, but it's got to happen at a national level. And the unfortunate thing is, Texas is ground zero. California, they're a welcoming state. They're giving driver's license to the undocumented. They're giving free health care. They need the labor. And if you've been to Napa Valley, I'm a wine drinker, and I love my Napa Valley wines. They've got a system there. They've got housing for them. They've got schools for them, because they need those workers in those vineyards. In the same way with the agricultural industry, they find a way to make it work, because they've got to produce those fruits. If we weren't getting our fruits and vegetables from the U.S., we'd be getting them from someplace else. Mm-hmm. And as Charles Foster would say, that's a matter of national security, because if we don't have foodstuffs because we're in a trade dispute with a country, that's going to hurt us. So we need to do something on a national basis. And if the president could do it by executive order, I think that's the most expedient way. But Congress could do it too. I mean, there's no reason. I've been to several congressmen and say, why don't you just have a bill? Well, it'd be a waste of time. I want to use my political capital for something else, or I don't want to do it because it might alienate somebody in the party, and it's amnesty. I mean, I hear so many excuses, and they're all excuses is what they are. And I've had too many politicians tell me, look, I can't do you any good unless I'm in office, so I got to do what's going to get me reelected. That may be right, but for him, but that's not why you go into office. You go into office for change. You go into office to make a statement of what you believe in. And if you don't get reelected, that's tough. You tried. But for these politicians just to cop out and say, well, I can't do you any good unless I'm in office, I mean, to me, that's just not, I don't think our forefathers thought about it like that. I think they went out there and fought for what they thought was right, regardless of the consequences. And that's sort of what I'm doing with my advocacy of immigration. I'm not real popular with a lot of people. And I've had threats from people. Mind your own business, leave it alone. Why don't you do something else? That's not me. I want to get out there, and what drives me the most are my employees, and their families and their friends who are not of status. I think one of the proudest things I am is of those videos, the very first one, The Immigrant's Promise, which shows that people in America do appreciate immigrants. I showed those videos to 170 HISD kids at a summer event, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and all Latino are African Americans or African immigrants. And that's the closest I've seen to having a standing ovation. It gave those kids hope. let those kids know that there's a gringo up there that represents a lot of other gringos in business and whatever that care about the kids, care about immigrants and the impact on our society and in our community. Houston is the most diverse city in the nation outside of New York City. And as Dr. Kleinberg would say, we are the face of the nation. Everyone else in this country will be like Houston before too long, and we better not screw it up. And believe me, we're well on our way to making it tough for all those people to assimilate, for those people to feel like they're part of our community. And that's not America.
Right. Well, I think that's a great way to end this conversation. Stan, Marek, thank you so much for answering these questions.
My pleasure. Good luck.
That was Stan Marek. That is it for this episode. Thank you for listening to Mexico Centered. Thanks to Lisa Wakata, our program manager, and to Tony Payan, the director of the Center for the United States and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. You can visit our website at bakerinstitute.org/Mexico, where you can find our latest publications. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guests and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of the center. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can email us at mexicocenter@rice.edu. We would love to hear from you. Mexico Centered is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and Radio Public. You can subscribe through your favorite podcast app to receive all of our new episodes directly on your phone. I am Enrique Quesada. I will see you next time.